Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another LinkedIn Live Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. Before we start, just a quick reminder if you want to watch the replay or some of the past replays, you can do that also on my YouTube channel. So we're streaming there as well. When you are there, hit subscribe. We are slowly growing the numbers. But yeah, we are back with another LinkedIn Live. And today we have a guest that was already once our guest. So we will dive even a little bit deeper and we will be talking about strategic priorities. And so it's my big honor to welcome John Murphy. John, welcome to the show. It's a huge pleasure to have you here. You are an amazing expert and an amazing guest every time when I've hosted you so far and when you were the host as well. So could you please tell us a little bit, introduce yourself for people who don't know you yet?
Well, listen, thank you. And it's a great pleasure to be here, Miha. I always enjoy these conversations and I always enjoy when we start really digging into what makes businesses and what makes teams really effective. And that's really where my focus is. I mean, my background before I started my own business, John Murphy International, I was in the corporate world. So I did the very traditional starting off as a salesman, became a sales manager, sales director, marketing director, and ended up as the CEO of Pan European Insurance Group, based out of Ireland. And but I decided after 7 years being a CEO that I really wanted to scratch the itch of running my own business. And the piece of the business that I really loved doing in the corporate world was, hiring talent, developing talent, and getting the team, the individuals to work together effectively. I really love doing that. And I decided then, 17 years ago, that I was going to set up my own business focusing on doing that. So the work that I do, Miha, is very much individual coaching at the C-suite, but also doing a lot of work with teams, cross-functional teams, critical teams, and teams that are focused on strategic priorities. And I do that in many large corporates that you would know, a lot in the pharmaceutical area, the likes of Merck and Pfizer, and others, and also have done that with different industries across the globe. So that's really the work that I do. As I said, it's individual coaching and team coaching, but really, really about driving the potential of a team and making sure that a team delivers on the results that they are expected to deliver.
Perfect. I love your very clear introduction so that we all know where you're coming from. So let's start at the beginning. So strategic priorities. Can we do a little bit of an introduction into, for somebody just watching? I have a lot of leaders in my audience, and some might be familiar, but maybe not with the how you explain it. So
Yeah.
maybe we should start there.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, I mean, I always think that it's, business is fundamentally uh, simple. I think we tend to make it complicated. And I think you probably agree with that, Mia, because I've
Yes.
heard you say something similar many, many times. I mean, I think that if you're looking at a business, the one thing that you've got to start off, is the vision clear. Is the vision really, really crystal clear? And when we talk about that, and very often when you talk to people and they explain their vision, you kind of go, I think I get it, but I'm not quite sure that I get it. And I always think the litmus test is that, if you told it to a 6-year-old, will they understand it? And I think that's not a bad way of looking at it. So I think that clarity of the vision is so really, really important. And the reason that the vision, apart from the obvious reason, but one of the reasons that it's so important to have the vision clear is that you've got to be able to explain it to the people that are joining your organization, to your customers, and you've got to make sure that it's the context for everything that you do. Because at the end of the day, it is that vision you create, or what you're trying to build. What is the business you're trying to create? Why does it exist? What is the purpose that it's got? And once you actually get clear on that, then you're able to come down and say, okay, if that's the vision, then what's the strategy for actually realizing that vision? And when you're talking about the strategy, I mean, you know, I remember going back years ago and we were talking about you'd write 10-year strategies and all that sort of stuff, which, being honest, at the time was really a bit of nonsense anyway. But you kind of went through the facade of doing it in the sense that you probably wrote a kind of a 1 or a 2-year strategy, and then you just kind of expanded it on to make it look like a 10-year strategy. But I mean, when you're looking at the market and you're looking at the environment that we're operating in, you've really got to have a very, very vibrant strategy, and you've got to have a strategy that is alive and that people understand. It's not just one of these kind of dusty old documents that you create and you put it on the shelf and then you get on the day-to-day stuff. Again, the strategy is about getting to the vision, and once you develop the strategy, then you actually clear, okay, well, there's the overall strategy. And then for the next 12 months, these are the, 3 or 4 or 5 key strategic priorities. These are the things that we must get done. These are the projects, the initiatives, the concepts that we're looking to realize that we actually must deliver in this period of time in order to be on track to deliver the vision. And I think that you've got to make it a very, very, very alive and very, very vibrant, so that it's something that people are talking about, that people actually engage with, they understand it. So it really helps when you actually say, okay, the strategic priorities for this year are, and you list them down. Now, it can be, it can be a small number, it can be a slightly larger number, but I mean, certainly wouldn't be going into kind of double digits with it by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't care how big the organization is. So, I mean, I was talking to one organization there recently, and they told me that when they added up, they had 73 projects, right?
Oh,
Now, you just kind of think that's just ridiculous. That's just an inability to actually decide what's important. So it really is about looking at the strategy that what are the strategic priorities for the next 12 months? And then we're going to work on that, and we'd evolve them and we develop them. And as we go through, we're going to review them, and then we're going to decide what are then the priorities for the following 12 months. So I think you've got to make it very much an alive document. So I hope that kind of answers the question in terms of, is that clear about what I mean by
no, yeah,
strategic priorities?
absolutely. And I love how you have this top-down approach. At least in the entrepreneurial world, what I see is that most entrepreneurs, they just go straight to the fire ground and they just do the implementation without any vision. Because like you said, if we don't have a vision, like even if you and I would right now want to go on a, I don't know, on a trip together, well, if we don't know where we are going, how can we even book the tickets? But it looks like that very often people just go ahead and try to book the tickets without a vision, a strategy, and then a plan before any kind of execution. So I
Yeah.
really, really love your
Yeah,
approach.
and it does also. I think the other thing, Mia, is that when you come to actually make, because say somebody something comes along and there's an opportunity, because you write a plan, and and you say, okay, well, that's the plan, and that seems okay in a textbook side, that's fine, okay, you're going, but things happen, opportunities come along, things come up, ideas come up, and you've got to be able to evaluate these against something. So if you don't have a strategy, every shiny new toy sounds like a good idea, right? Every idea sounds like something that you should just go after. And you end up in so many cul-de-sacs and down rabbit holes. Because, say, for example, if you're really clear about your strategic priorities and something comes along and you said, okay, well, there are 2 things we can do. We can spend, 10,000 euros, $10,000, $50,000 euros, whatever it might be. We can spend the 50,000 here, or we can spend it there. If you don't have a context and clarity in terms of the vision and the strategy, well, you've nothing to actually help you decide, well, if I spend it on this particular tool, whatever it might be, will that get me to achieve my vision quicker? Or if I spend it here? So it helps to actually educate the decisions that you're making better decisions. If you don't have a strategy, then every good idea is just a very good idea, but you can end up down many cul-de-sacs.
No, absolutely. We need that. We need that. How is it called? When we can make pivots on the spot when it's needed. We need to have that resilience to adopt to the changes that are happening, like what happened with Corona and stuff. But it still needs to be aligned with the vision where we are going. Otherwise, it's very hard to make decisions. And then we come up with, I feel, I think,
Yeah.
and those are not the best strategies to
No, they're
make
not.
decisions.
But I think the sad part of it as well is that I think that the research, Harvard has done research, and I think the figure hasn't changed an awful lot, is that it's only about 67% of strategy actually gets implemented, right? Which is a huge waste of time. And for me, I just kind of always feel that, you know, if that is the reality, and I've no doubt, and that would actually, I would kind of experience the same thing in terms of working with organizations. But you've got to make sure that you actually are setting up your strategic priorities in the right way. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And so many kind of either fizzle out or just get morphed into something else, but they don't actually see it through the whole way.
John, before we go into right and wrong way, because yes, that's what we want to talk here, I would just like invite you to maybe really briefly, if you could just spend a few minutes on talking maybe us through a little bit on how to effectively communicate the vision. So we created the vision, and like you mentioned, it's so important that we communicate it in the right way, so that we create emotions, that we create that attach, like to have the whole team and everybody in the company behind the vision. Would you mind
No, not at
spending
all.
a little bit on that, and then we can go to
Yeah. No, I mean,
priorities?
that's you're going to a topic that that would be that I love. Think that you've got to, I mean, most businesses where they're started is, started by one person or one or two or three people, and they create the vision, or they need to create the vision. But very often, I would find that, and I'm sure you would find this too, that a lot of entrepreneurial businesses are started on a kind of a hunch, a feel, a belief, a conviction, whatever it might be, and then they really start to craft the vision afterwards, and that's fine. I mean, it's not necessarily something that happens straight out of the box. But I think that one of the things that as you build the business, because the founder and the creator of the business is kind of, it's in their DNA, right? And it's their baby, they've created it. But then once you start to expand and you're bringing people in, it's not in those people's DNA, right? It's not their idea. It's not their concept. They're coming to actually work with you, but you've got to make it in a way that is going to be exciting for them. And that's why you've got to engage them with the vision, and bringing them in to actually talk about it. Maybe you alter the vision slightly, that's fine, but you've really got to make people actually understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And that just you need to invest the time in talking about it. You need to invest the time in sitting down and explaining it, and you explain that what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it, and what the impact is going to be of the business will have on the sector it's in, or the people that it's actually serving, whatever it might be. But you've really got to invest the time. And I think as every leader has got to take responsibility for the fact that one of their primary jobs is to really make sure that they are continuously talking about it, they're referencing it, they're actually making sure that, like when you're making a decision, well, which will bring us closer to our vision, right? And then you actually make sure that the people who are in the organization, that you're really talking and getting them engaged and excited about the vision. But they've got to understand it. And some people say, well, okay, well, I did a presentation to the staff and I explained the vision. That's once, right? That's not going to be one and done, right? You've got to always talk. It's what you talk about. Yeah, it's what you bring it into conversation. It's like values, right?
Yeah.
You can put values up on a board, right? But if you are never talking about them, they don't exist, right? So
I absolutely agree.
What people hear you talk about, then they know that you're serious about it. It's not just a box ticking exercise. It's actually really, really important. The challenge then that you have is that when you bring people into the organization, those people have got to buy into the vision. but they've got to understand it first before they can buy into it. But they've got to buy into the vision, and then you come into challenges where some people who don't buy into the vision, and what do you do? And then sometimes there are tough decisions that you've got to make in regard to that, because what you need to have is the collective all going in the same direction to actually ensure that they are realizing the vision.
Yeah, I absolutely love what you said. You have to uh, leave it, breathe it, talk about it,
Yeah.
connect it with everything. Vision, mission, values, company culture. It all needs to be repeated over and over and over, because otherwise people can very easily forget and switch on the autopilots and so on. And you really, really have to talk about it. And I love what you said. It needs to be part of the recruitment process as well, so that you try to really get a good fit, a company culture fit, somebody who fits with the vision, mission, values, company culture.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that when you talk about culture there, Miha, and that's a really important part of it, because the fact of the matter is that you're going to end up with some culture. Even by doing nothing, you're going to end up with some culture. But by doing nothing, you're probably going to end up with a culture that you don't like. And so you've got to be really intentional about it, because these all knit together. These aren't separate things. Your vision, your mission, your values, and your strategy, they're all connected to each other, and all of those things actually determine the culture of the organization, or the culture that you're trying to create. And culture culture will happen, but if you have a very clear idea of the culture that you want, you've got to create that culture. It just doesn't happen on its own. So you've got to create the culture in terms of how you want people to behave, how you want people to work together. What's the right way of working? What's the wrong way of working? What are the things? What are the rules of engagement in this organization? What are what behavior is acceptable? What behavior is not acceptable? And you've got to always have these conversations, and recognize that none of these things, as I said, are a one and done thing, because a business growing, if you have a team of 5 people and then you bring one other person into it, now you've got a different team, right? It's not just, we've got the same team plus one. It's now a different team. So you've actually then got to make sure that you're really, really reinforcing the culture that you want to have in that particular team. So it's got to be very intentional, and not just kind of, well, it'll be whatever it'll be, or this is what I really like it to be. Be clear about the culture that you want. Be really clear. And when we're talking about culture, somebody says to me, how do you know? How do you know? How do you determine what the culture is in an organization? I always say it's very simple. Listen to how they talk. Listen to how they talk to each other. Listen to how they talk about the business. Listen to how they talk about their customers. Listen to how they talk about what they do. That actually tells you what the culture is. It doesn't matter what's on the website, or it doesn't matter what's on the plaque in the reception area. It's actually how people talk.
John, do you often see when you work? I know you work more with the corporate clients. I work more with entrepreneurs, and with entrepreneurs, even when they do have mission, vision statements, and so on, it's more on the website. It's more written somewhere, but they don't really live it and do things accordingly. Or maybe they didn't even create those documents, they just copy pasted a little bit from some other websites. They said, oh look, they have vision statement, we should have that as well. That one looks good, let's copy paste it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I think that to an extent, you can understand it to an extent. But I think that as you're developing a business, that's just not acceptable. You've just got to go and invest the time in doing that. And if you invest the time in doing that, all of these things are long-term payoffs, right? Because I mean, in the entrepreneurial world, and and I've got many entrepreneurial clients, and when you're actually looking at the business, the value that the business, that the value that you put on the business, things like culture and values and the behavior of the staff, all of these matter, and they actually can determine the price that people will sell a business for. So it's not just a nice to have. It's not just something that, well, it'd be great if we did it, but it's not really all that important. And I always go back to the work that Patrick Lencioni did in the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and many other stuff that he wrote, where he actually, I mean, in the research that he did, where there's a direct correlation between the level of trust in an organization and with the real trust within the organization of each other, there's a direct correlation between that and the profitability of the company. And that research has kind of stood the test of time. So this is not just a nice to have. I mean, when you're looking
I
at
agree.
organizations, and I mean, and you know this, there's buckets of research that would actually support this. That, you know, we talk about, oh well, if you get the strategy right, you get the organization right, and you get the product right, hey presto, you're fine. It's important to get all of those things right. I'm not saying it isn't. But when you're talking about the soft skills and the soft side, which is the culture and behavior, they are equally important in a business.
Even if we look at McKinsey, for example, they have their 7S framework.
Yes.
The first one that combines all of the other S's is shared values.
Yes.
And you can't have a long-term, sustainable, profitable business without proper foundations. And vision, mission, values, company culture is a huge part of those foundations. You can't just have the hard ones, you need the soft ones as well.
Yeah.
And the 7S framework, for example, is a great look on how to balance. You have 3 soft ones, 3 hard ones, and then the shared values that connect the whole thing together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, you know, where you've got poor culture and organization, you've then got high turnover. Where you've got high turnover, it's very costly, right? It has a very negative impact upon the customer relations. So, you know, all of these things matter. We're not just talking about it here because, well, wouldn't it be nice, and wouldn't it be kind of a Pollyanna idea that we live in this way? This is tough stuff. I mean, creating a really good culture is not easy. It's a lot of work has to go into it. It's not just a few kind words and a few pats on the back. You really need to put thought into it. You need to put, resource into it. But the payback, the long-term payback, is so well worth it. And I would really, to anybody starting out a business, anybody at any stage in the business, if you're not clear about your vision, your mission, your values, your strategy, and your culture, then you are really missing something so fundamental to the business. And even if one part of that is missing, that is fundamental.
Absolutely. John, let's not stay too long on this topic because we still have the main topic to discuss, the strategic priorities. And you mentioned before there's right and wrong way on how to do it, how to approach it. So now I would really like us to use the rest of the time that we have to really speak on this topic, because it is very important. Once you do the fundamental stuff, you need to dive into strategy and then planning, prioritizing, and it is very, very important. And I see with entrepreneurs, not many do it right. They have too many priorities. They are not aligned step by step. And so I really want you to take the floor and talk about this.
Okay. Well, I think that the point that you just made there, Mia, is such a hugely important one. Is that there are too many priorities, and in truth, when you've got lots of priorities, you've got no priorities, because every organization has got a certain amount of capacity in terms of what it can actually deliver upon. And I think where you end up in organizations, I mean, I mentioned the one earlier on, I've got 70 odd. I mean, that's extreme and that's ridiculous. But I mean, we've all seen organizations that, even, kind of relatively small organizations that can be highly profitable, can, turn over millions upon millions. But then they're saying, okay, well, we've got 12 priorities for the next 12 months. That's crazy, right? And that's actually one of the reasons that they're really going to set themselves up to fail or not to deliver what they can do. And, I always go back to the great Steve Jobs quote, which is about, focus is about saying no. It's not about saying yes. And I think you've got to really, really figure it out. And also you look at it realistically and say, what bandwidth do we have in the organization in order to deliver and devote? Because, projects are things that have got to be done, but also we've got to keep the business ticking over. and we can't just take everybody off kind of the day-to-day operating of the business and put them focus on projects. So projects tend to be done by and large alongside the operational side of the business. So we've got to be really careful about how many priorities we say, and we really got to evaluate them before we actually dive in and say that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. Even whether you are a solopreneur
Yeah,
or Apple, you don't have unlimited resources.
absolutely, you don't
Yes,
have.
Apple can work on a few more things than a solopreneur.
Yeah,
They do have some cash in the bank so that they can have a few more focus groups going on and so on. But they're on such a huge market that for them, one project is already very big. And if they have 75 priorities, they will not accomplish anything. So
yeah.
very good point on that.
So I think that you're always going to have a number of ideas which can morph into projects, but I think you've got to go through a very, very kind of strict process yourself to actually determine well, which one should we pick, because it's always about choices. As I said, it's the Steve Jobs, it's about saying no, but you've got to make sure that the ones that you pick are the right ones. And I mean, and there's no 100% guarantee that you're going to get this right, but you've got to have some process to actually determine it. And I think that there are a couple of things that you really have got to kind of say, okay, well, do they tick these boxes? I think that one is about what's the business impact. If we were to deliver this, what is the business impact? And then what's the business need? So does the business need this? What would the impact be? And really then, once you've actually started to work through that, is to say, okay, well, if we're looking at these projects and we've determined, or we've come down to kind of say, okay, we've now got maybe a shorter list than the original kind of bunch of ideas, is then to actually start to challenge and say, okay, well, what is the strategic ambition of this particular project? What it is actually going to deliver? How ambitious is it? Is it a big dream? Is it just a kind of a slightly incremental one? Is it a real moonshot? Will it be something that will stand out in the marketplace, or will it leave a lasting mark, or will it just be, well, so what? So I think you've really got to challenge and really get a few people together, because it's not something you should do on your own, but to actually get a few people together to really kind of challenge the thinking about how ambitious is this project, and to really to score that and to determine it. And I think the other thing is to actually to say, okay, well, what level of confidence do we have in the project? What are the factors that are shaping the level of confidence? I mean, it could be, do we have the people? Do we have the resources? Whatever it might be. So you've really got to make sure that you've kind of challenged yourself in regard to how confident you are that you can deliver on this project. And do you have the people? Do you have the people with the mindset? Do you have the people with the skills? Do you have the people, or can you access those resources? So I think the ambition and the confidence, to me, is always kind of started, because very often you find when talking to companies, say, well, is this project, is this actually going to significantly change the business, or is it only going to be a kind of a modest increment? And very often we talk up a project to be vitally important, but when you really analyze it deeply, is it a moonshot? And not everything can be a moonshot, but is this actually going to significantly change the landscape of the business if we actually deliver on this project? So I think that that's always kind of a litmus test of actually understanding it. And then I said, I think it's about the business impact. What quantifiable impact is that going to have on the business? And that's in the, it could be in the short term, medium term, or long term. But it really has got to look at what is the impact on the future of the business. Does this actually bring it into a different market? Does it expand its market share? Does it actually position it as something special within the marketplace? And also, is it, when we look at the market that it's in, is the difference that it's going to make it a player in what that market is going to look like in the future? Because, the market is evolving as well. The market isn't static. So you've got to make sure that, okay, you can change in line with the market, but then you really haven't changed. But is this actually going to really, when you look at the market and how fast the market is changing, what the market is going to look like, is this project going to really have the impact? Or is it going to be, if it delivers in 2 years' time, is it just going to be, 12 months late? So I think that there are a couple of things like that. And then I think you've got to really look at the urgency and the timeline and have these conversations, because I do see, Miha, too many projects get started without really doing the kind of grunt work, as I would call it, and the painful work and the hard work and the sort of things that I'm talking about here, to really, really assess it. We tend to get excited and we want to start doing things, and we don't spend enough time evaluating it and making sure that we're picking the right, making the right choice, because it is about choices, right? Because we can, and it's all about choices. So we got to make sure that we're making the right choice, because and it doesn't matter what size you have a limited resource, whether that's, people, money, whatever, assets, whatever it might be. And are we actually really utilizing and leveraging those resources to the maximum with this particular project? Or should there be another project that we would look at?
No, absolutely. I mean, I just fully agree. When I work with companies, what we always do is we create an idea inbox where everybody can participate with the ideas when they happen. But then there needs to be a dedicated business development person who really dives into the numbers, the product market fit, the market potential share, timelines, and all of that. And you really need to combine the heart with the logic, and look at it from all the different angles, because like you said, so many projects get started but then they don't follow through, and usually the follow through doesn't happen because they didn't do the initial work and not everything was as clear as possible, and then people or companies just give up because they run into unforeseen problems, or a lack of resources, or
Yeah.
changes on the market, or whatever.
And you do see that a lot, Mia. I'm sure. I mean, you do it in the work that you do, and I see it in the work that I do. That, we start off, and we set a budget. And one of the things that we don't spend enough time doing at the outset is actually really, reality checking that budget. I mean, is that budget, is it sufficient to do it? Because so many, and I'm sure you've seen this, that, we start doing something and then realize, oh gosh, it's going to cost X, but then you realize it's actually going to cost plus X plus 50%, right? But you don't have the 50%. And then
Yeah.
what have you done, right? You've probably wasted and lost money and time and resources and everything else. So I think, it's almost as if you're kind of holding people back a little bit initially, because our anxiety, and for all of us who are kind of entrepreneurial and business people, we want to move things forward. That's just our nature, right? It's part of who we are, is we want to get going and doing something. But sometimes we need to be protected from ourselves a little bit, and in a sense, it's just to hold us back and say, listen, let's do a fair bit of groundwork. Are we clear that this is in line? Is it going to get us closer to our vision? Is it ambitious enough? Are we confident that we can actually do it? Is it actually going to have the real impact that we're talking about? Or is it just we've convinced ourselves that it is going to have? Is it business usual, or is it business unusual? Because if it's business as usual, kind of why? Right. But is it business unusual? And then, about the marketplace, understanding our market. And obviously you've got to understand your market, but you've got to understand what the future market is going to look like. And once you've actually delivered that, particularly if you've got a longer term project, will that, when you've delivered it, is that actually going to be, will that make a difference in the market that will exist at that time? I think it's important.
Yeah,
And I think the other
absolutely.
thing that you've got to do, and and I see this very often, ignored, is managing stakeholders. Right now, stakeholders come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, if you're, kind of, it can be the shareholders in a business, It can be the owners of the business. Sometimes the shareholders are working in the business. Sometimes they're not working in the business. But if they're not working in the business, how committed are those stakeholders and shareholders to this initiative? How committed, the staff that are actually going to it, how committed are they to it? Are there external resources or partners you're going to bring in to help you build it, create it, whatever it might be? How committed are they? Have they got the resources to actually put to it? So you've got to look at all of the people that are around the project before you get going, and make sure that you've got the engagement.
Yeah, that you have buy-in from
And you
every
buy in,
side.
yeah. You buy in from all of those people. And you do that before you really, put a spade in the ground.
Yeah,
And
before you launch it.
before you launch it. And I think that, so that would be, for me, Mia, that would be kind of the holding of people back and saying, okay, let's just sit down and let's kind of lock ourselves away in a room and let's actually do this piece of work just to really stress test it and make sure that we've got the right level of ambition, and we've got the right level of confidence, right?
Yeah.
And all of the other things together before we start doing it. But then, once you actually get into implementation, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? And you really got to make sure that you've got a very, very good process for tracking it, reviewing it, because there are so many moving parts to it. But that I always think that what I always refer to as kind of the kind of first mile of a project in many ways. And it's a bit like the airplane. Once it kind of launches and it gets airborne, it's off, right? But it's got to get airborne, right?
Yeah.
And I think the first mile of a project is really important. And some of that can be in what I'm talking about during the initial stages, but it is making sure that you're clear about all of the moving parts in the project, and you've got very, very good information around that.
Yeah, good project management in place.
I think good project management, that you've got regular meetings, that you're keeping all the people who need to be connected to it, that everybody who is bought into the vision, and everyone is very clear about what success looks like. I was doing some work with an organization not too long ago, and they were talking about a project. Now, it wasn't part of the work that I was doing with them, and there was just something that they were doing. And I said, okay, well, with this project, what does winning look like when this project is realized? What does success look like? And the scary thing, Miha, was, and this project was probably about, I'm guessing, but probably around 60 to 70% completed, right? In their mind. And yet I got various different answers of what success and what winning in the project would look like. And I was saying to them, I said, listen, you cannot have that variant, among the people in the project, because if you and I are going on a journey and I've got a different view of the destination we're going to have a problem getting there together.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really important. And it's such a simple thing that you really got to make sure that everyone is very clear of what success looks like, because, and you see it probably a lot in large organizations as well, that a project gets delivered and people are going, oh, I thought it was going to be something different. I thought it would be different. I thought it would do this, or I thought it would do that. And it doesn't do that. Oh, it does that. I didn't know it did that. That's a recipe for disaster, because that actually just really, really damages the reputation of a project. And because you want everyone to be excited about it, and you want everyone to be really thrilled when you're actually, when the project goes live. And that's only going to happen if everybody has got absolute clarity about what success looks like for that project.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. One thing that you mentioned, how we underestimate the resources needed. I think it's just in our human nature to be overly optimistic when we are looking in the future. And I mean, even I see that with entrepreneurs just starting out, and when, like, a simple task, planning out the week ahead, and they put so many things on the calendar, thinking like, oh, this is half an hour, that's 40 minutes, this is half an hour, and then they end up for the first 2 days doing just the first task from Monday morning, and they're like, oh shit, how will I accomplish everything else? And the bigger the organization, the bigger the plan, the bigger the chances of underestimating something. So when I work with companies, we just add 50% of all the resources just to be on the safe side, and even sometimes adding 50% is not enough.
Well, I think it's a very good approach to take, because I think that we all I think we all overestimate what we can do in a week and underestimate what we can do in a year, right?
Yes.
And and I think it's kind of a strange one in some ways, but I do think that, particularly when you're looking at projects that have got significant investment, excuse me, if you don't get that right, you can end up losing an awful lot of money. So, you really do have to make sure that you have, as best you can, and I do say as best you can, because nobody's got a crystal ball and be exact about it, and it's not an exact science. But as best you can, that you're pretty satisfied that you've got the budget, the resources to actually deliver on the project. Now, something can always come along and change it, and that can happen. But I think as a on the outset, don't be overly optimistic about what people can deliver and what time scale they can deliver it in. These things tend to take longer and tend to be a bit more complex than they looks like on paper.
And maybe have balls to cut the project
Yeah,
loose. If this is one thing that I see with entrepreneurs, they start something with passion, they don't do the fundamental work, and then 6 months in, they see that they tremendously under budgeted, whether that's time, money, human, or all of everything together. But then they just keep going because they're so invested, and then even scarier things happen, and even larger failures down the line, because yeah, they start making crazy decisions just to keep something going, because oh, we've invested so much already, we have to make this a success. So having the balls to say, to just draw the line and say
yeah,
fuck
yeah.
it. And
Exactly. And I think also we all can fall into the trap of it being a kind of a pet project of mine, right? This is something that I really like. This is something that I really enjoy. And this is something that I really, really want to create, right? That's not a solid foundation for setting out on a project to deliver something, right? That's just a personal, and they are the hardest ones to actually put your hand up and you say, you know what? Ain't gonna fly. Let's forget it. Let's just dump this and put it to one side. So I think we've got to be really careful about the pet projects. But I absolutely agree with you. You've got to know when to actually say, that's it. Draw a line. Forget about it. It seemed like a good idea, but it's not actually going to fly for us. And
yeah,
and that's, making that decision is a far better decision than just keep on investing, and hoping. Hope is never a good strategy.
yeah, I think, I feel, I hope,
Yeah.
not a very good
No, it's not a
way
good
to make
strategy.
business decisions.
But I think that also, as you're going through, I mean, I think, we talked about some reasons that projects and strategic projects fail. But I think that probably the one going back to where we started was having too many, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
and I think it's being really, really clear. You know, if you were to sit down and, with anybody like, a Jeff Bezos or a Richard Branson or, Elon Musk or whatever it might be, and you asked any of those what's their number one priority, they would be able to tell you, right? Because it truly is their number one priority. It's not amongst their priorities, it is their number one priority. And that's where they're putting the bulk of the resources on that. And I think that, when you look at that, large organizations are not all that different. They will have a single big priority that the organization gets behind. And we got to make sure that we don't fall in, because, as entrepreneurs, that we don't fall into the trap and say, well, that's all very well, but, I've got loads of things to do, right? You're
Yeah,
far better off, and I know even in my own business and planning, I mean, I tend to work in 90-day cycles. and I make a decision about what I'm going to focus on over the 90 days. And I've learned this the hard way, because I've learned this through ending up, because I mean, I would be, as prone to the shiny new toy and chasing the silver paper, because I like it, and it's an idea, and it's innovative, and it's creative, and I just enjoy it, right? I've really got to be disciplined about saying, okay, this is what I'm going to deliver in terms of the focus on strategic priorities for this quarter. And I do break it down into that. And if something comes along, it's a conversation with myself to say, okay, well, do I drop something to take this one on, or do I just simply say, no, that's it for this quarter? I will have a look at it in the next quarter, and to do it that way. But I just think that you've got to be really, really disciplined about it, and make sure that you finish projects and don't just let them dissipate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Follow through. Once you start them, I mean, there is this great poem by Charles Bukowski, All the Way. And I mean, it's more like a motivational thing on YouTube. But still, if you're not going to follow through, if you're not going to finish, why even start? And I think that is a very big lesson, to follow through with things, to make a good plan, prioritize, do all the foundational work like you talked for the past half an hour, and then follow through. And
Yeah.
I think this would be probably the best place for us to move in the last two questions, because we're already 45 minutes in. And not that I love talking to you, John, but if we are going for too long, then people might be afraid to watch the replay.
Absolutely.
When they see, oh, there's an hour and a half. It's better to invite you again and continue the conversation on another. So my two last questions. The first one, who should reach out to you, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, the best way to reach out to me is that they can go to my website, johnmurphyinternational.com, or my email address is john@johnmurphyinternational.com, and I'd be delighted to talk to them. I said my clients, it's a mixture of business owners and large corporates. So people who are in the C-suite, or people who are driving a business. When people in the C-suite are driving a business, so it tends to be both the mix of the corporates and also business owners that I work with. And I'd be delighted to have a chat with anybody, and to kind of share my views and to give a view, and at any time, so people can reach out to me there.
Perfect. Last question, the golden nugget of wisdom. So maybe we didn't mention something and you really want the audience to take that away. So it's a free stage is yours.
I think when you're looking at your business, is to kind of really say, okay, if I look down the next 12 months, what is the one thing that I can do or get done? I don't have to necessarily do it myself, but what is the one thing that would actually have the biggest impact on the long-term value of this business? What is the number one thing that I can do that actually would really, really impact the long-term value of this business? And once you've actually decided what that one thing is, then actually just go and get it done.
Yes, go and do it. That is a very, very good, solid advice, because so many people just lack on that last step, which is action taking. But that might be something for the next time.
Absolutely.
So, John, thank you for being my guest. Thank you for being on the show. You were just dropping value bomb after value bomb, and I really honestly appreciate you for that. Wish you all but everything but the best all the best in your future endeavors. And I'm looking forward to us doing another one of these in the near future.
Well, Mia, it's always great fun to get together with you. I enjoy you. I love the way you think. And I love the way you go about what you do. I think the way you actually run your business and the way you support your clients is phenomenal. And I so much admire what you do that. So and I love these conversations, and I'm always happy to come back. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Well, likewise, I really value you as well, and I love the way you think, the way you present things in a very clear and easy to understand way. So yeah, thank you from my end as well. And
Okay.
yeah, just have fun, enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So this was John, a very dear friend of mine. And yes, as you can see, we share a lot of how we think about running a business, doing business, leadership, and so on. Yes, John is more from the corporate world, works more with corporations, but as you heard, he works with entrepreneurs as well. I'm more focused on the entrepreneurial world and less on the corporate. But yeah, very good ideas how to think top down, how to go from step to step, how not to overlook foundations, and how to properly prioritize and manage your resources. So a very good interview, and I invite everybody to really connect with John and yeah, have a chat with him. I'm absolutely sure that he could be a very valuable asset to your business or to your corporation. And with that, next Monday we have another LinkedIn Live. Join us again. It will be another great interview. So take care, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I wish you all a wonderful week.